Welcome to Pera's Playbook. This is your host, Alex Pera. Let's open up our playbook and see who our guest is. Please enjoy. Welcome to episode 182 of Pera's Playbook. Today we're joined by Robert Clotworthy. He's an actor and a voice actor. He's been in numerous TV shows and films and done voice work for many projects, and we're going to talk about all that today. So happy to have Robert on the podcast. How's it going?
Fantastic. Thank you for having me on. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to it as well. It started out I was thinking I really wanted to get people who had been in MASH on the podcast. So I was searching and searching
Okay.
and I had another actor who had an episode of MASH on a few weeks ago, and when you answered me, I started looking into the things you've done, and I was like, "Oh wow, he was also on this, and I've seen that movie and I've done this." So it started out as just MASH, and then I realized that you've had, a stellar career in many different areas of the industry. Excited to talk about um, all of those. So how did you start, into acting and
Uh,
voice work?
well, first of all, I was going to say I was pretty lucky. I've worked on a lot of shows, worked with a lot of amazing people, a lot of amazing directors, actors. So yeah, when I think back of when I started back in 19, I think it was 71, as I was still in high school. It's a fun ride when you think about when I think about all the people I worked with. But my father was in advertising. He was an advertising executive and worked with a company called BBD&O. And if you've ever seen the show Mad Men, that was essentially my childhood. He was one of those advertising guys. He was from the East Coast, but was in the office out here in Los Angeles. And as a kid, he would bring me down to recording sessions because he primarily worked in radio, doing radio ads. And I would be there watching some of the most amazing voice actors of my childhood work. And, just imagine if you're, 8 years old or 9 years old, and the people that do all the cartoon characters, the video game characters, or whatever it is you're watching at that time in your life are right in front of you, and you get to meet them, and they're doing those voices and they're having fun. And I guess it just sparked this fire in me. I just loved what it is they were doing, and started just kind of goofing around as a kid. And I was always one of those, I guess, precocious, outgoing boys that was, it was hard to keep me still. And when I was in high school, my father finally relented and said, "Okay, I'll introduce you to some casting people that he knew." And I met them. They suggested I go to a workshop that an agent had, and it's amazing this guy did this at that time, but he had a workshop every Saturday in Los Angeles and Hollywood, and his focus as an agent was primarily on young people. And so he brought me in there, and at this workshop, they would do scene study, they would do improvisation, they would do dance, they would do theater games, all kinds of fun stuff just to get kids to, begin to learn the craft. And I went there and I did, just did an improv with some kids just goofing around. And that same day, he asked me if I would, he said, I want to handle you. And I said, okay, talk to my dad. He was my agent. First audition I went on, I got. Third audition I went on, I got. The fifth audition I went on, I got. So I started working right away. And, you know, now all these years later, it's it's always been a career, but it's really been very, very nice discovering the narration side of acting because, A, it's rare for an actor to have a job that lasts, a few weeks, let alone a number of years. And then you add to that the fact that I've got two documentary series that we're going into well into our second decade is pretty amazing. So I'm pretty lucky and fortunate there. So that's kind of the Reader's Digest version of how I got there. And in between all that, I did TV shows and movies, and I worked on all all the shows in the 70s and the 80s that you can possibly imagine. And it was a lot of fun. But honestly, I'm having more fun now than I did then. And believe me, then it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, that's a good thing, right? If you're having
Yeah,
more fun
yeah.
now than you were then, that's always a plus. And you mentioned these TV shows. I mean, you had appearances on The Waltons and The Rockford Files and Columbo and all
Yeah,
these Three's
yeah,
Company.
yeah.
And I noticed on IMDb you were credited as a hamburger eating teen in an episode of Emergency. And I love Emergency. It's one of my
Oh,
favorite
okay.
TV shows. That's why I had to
That
bring it up.
I think that was actually the very first show that I ever did. And it was Randy Mantooth, and I'm trying to remember what the other fellow's name on the show. And we I guess it was 1972 or three. I can't remember what year it was that I did that show. But it was funny when you look back because we're all wearing those kind of post hippie outfits and a lot of puka shells and it was I the scene was the I guess the guys get a call that somebody is in distress at a hamburger joint and they're suffering from stomach pains, and they show up and they see this big football muscular kind of a guy, teenager, writhing on the ground in pain, and the kids that are around him say, oh, well, they ask what happened. They say, well, he ate 23 hamburgers in a contest. And the guys joked and said, well, at least he won. And then I, of course, stand up and I'm rail thin. I'm a pretty slender guy anyway, but I was really skinny as a teenager. I said, no, I won. I ate 24. And I remember I had really long hair with it. And it was a lot of fun. But it was at that time, Universal, the studio, they still had the contract players. They still had some actors that were under contract. And as part of the deal, they had these limos and they would have to take you to the set in a limo. So you drive over to the studio, and even if the location was 10 minutes away from your house, you still have to drive to the studio so they can drive you in a limo to the set. So that was pretty exciting to be, 15, 16 years old and get in a limo and being taken to the set and see all this stuff. And of course, I was a big fan of the show at the time and watching these two guys show up and but obviously recognizing them. It was a blast. I had a good time. Had a really good time.
Yeah, a couple days ago when I was doing my research, I went back and I found that episode and I found the scene, and just as you were talking it through, I was picturing it in my head, and yeah, even if it was a small role, I mean it's just like you said, a cool experience to
Yeah.
be on a show like that at such a young age and be surrounded by the level of talent that was on that show. And I mean it had a very successful run.
Oh yeah.
Its time, it was one of the most popular shows on television.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, I remember I did an episode of a show called The Police Story, and I got to play all kinds of different characters. Where I played a car thief in it, and I can't believe that they let me get away with what they let me get away with, because here I was, maybe, I don't know, 17 years old, 18 tops, something like that, really young guy. And the scene was, uh, and Mike Connors, the guy that played was on Mannix, was the guest star, and he had this rookie cop who was going with him that he's trying to teach the ropes, and they see this Corvette shoot by them, you know, speeding downtown, and they pull it over, and it's me, and I'm trying to BS him and tell him that's my dad's car, and blah, blah, I didn't know what I was doing, and next thing you know, I'm pulling a gun on them, and they're arresting me. But the funny thing was, when they shot the scene, they gave me the keys to the car. Normally, you would have like a stunt driver, because this was a Corvette. This was like a 454, whatever the engine. I mean, it was fast. And they did this. I remember that they had a walkie. All I had in the car with me was a walkie-talkie. And they said, okay, what we want you to do is we're going to do a long shot. And if you see the show, you'll see the long shot. And it shows this Corvette come around a corner and just speed down this street, and then pass a car that's going slow. And they had supposedly blocked off the street. So no cars were supposed to be there. It was supposed to be just me and the road, and that was it. And somehow, they call action, and I just start flooring it, right? And it was like a Volkswagen, a little bug or something that came out of a side street or out of somebody's driveway. All of a sudden, it's there. And I thought, well, I can't just like slow down and go behind. So that's why I intentionally swerved around the car into the opposing traffic, what would have been if there were any cars coming, and whipped around him. And afterwards, I thought, this is kind of a thing that normally a stunt driver would do. Not They wouldn't give this to an 18-year-old, but it was, again, I survived. It was fun. It was the one shot that they after that they said that we're fine. We don't need to do it again. So that's the shot that's in the show. But it was a
Wow.
blast.
That's a lot of trust. I'll have to see if I can find that on YouTube or something.
Yeah, I can't remember what the show is called. Oh my God. Yeah, but look it up with Mike Connors. I think he did like 2 or 3 episodes, but I think that was the first one.
Wow. Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah,
Those are the kind of stories I love. These
yeah,
the behind the scenes when you hear about actors and their experiences and yeah, just one of the things I enjoy about doing the podcast, just hearing all these kinds of stories.
yeah.
So let's talk MASH. You were in
Okay.
episode Dear Comrade,
Yeah,
which had a like a North Korean spy kind of
right.
infiltrated MASH trying to get the secrets, and he's paired up with Winchester and as
Mm-hmm.
his
Mm-hmm.
houseboy or whatever. And you were one of the soldiers in the pre-op in the ward that has the rash that nobody can
Right.
figure out
Right.
what's wrong with you, and you get the really stinky local remedy on you, and
Yeah.
get to share a scene with Harry Morgan and Loretta Swit, who
Yep.
sadly just passed. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, let's talk about that. I mean, really cool to get to share the scene with those two actors there.
Well, I remember that very well. First of all, MASH was a big hit. So it was obviously a very popular show, and to be on the show was pretty that was a great honor. And if you're on the show, unless you're a regular, you're going to be basically a soldier that's got something wrong with him. So I remember that we shot it over at Paramount Studios. They had a sound stage there. And no, no, wait, what am I saying? 20th Century Fox. Over at 20th Century Fox, and you show up, and you go into a wardrobe, and of course the wardrobe is these thin pajamas, some slippers, and a very thin bathrobe. I mean, that was it. It's nothing elegant at all. And then you go to makeup, and they started applying all this goo all over my face and hands and arms, anything that was exposed, all right, you know, a rash and open sores and all kinds of stuff. And so you just absolutely look horrible. And once they finished that, I remember that they broke for lunch. They said, "Okay, it's lunch." And since you're working at the studio, it's not like they bring in lunch for you. If you're on location, they have a caterer and they bring in lunch. But this was, you go to the commissary. So like, okay, and you can't get out of your wardrobe. You don't change to get out of this stuff. So here I am wearing slippers, pajamas, a thin bathrobe with open sores all over my face. And I go into the commissary, and that same day, I remember there were all these incredibly beautiful women in line to get food because Charlie's Angels was shooting a beauty pageant scene. So you had all these women with like, Miss Maryland, Miss whatever the heck it is, across their chests, and I'm in line in a bathrobe with open sores. Needless to say, I didn't get very many phone numbers that day.
That's
But I got my
awesome.
revenge because I eventually went back. I don't know if you know this or not with Elizabeth Banks when I did the reboot of Charlie's Angels. I ended up being the voice of Charlie. So I thought, okay, this is a nice little kind of a circular trip here.
Yeah. Yeah, that's that's funny. Oh yeah.
But yeah, it was a lot of fun working on the show. I mean, I got to meet Alan Alda, got to meet everybody that was there, and he there's something special when you're working with people that are really, really good, and it elevates your game. It also makes your job so much easier because all you have to do is basically be present and listen and play with them, and it's fascinating to work with people of that caliber, not just the actors, but the director as well, the writer. I mean, it's a great, a really well written show. So the actor's job, I guess, is just to not screw it up. At that point, you just let it be, and it's all good.
Yeah. Yeah, the cast is phenomenal, and you talk about Alan Alda, and he's a guy that through one episode he can invoke so many emotions, and you can be
Yeah,
laughing one minute and
yeah,
crying a next,
yeah.
and just be based on the story and his ability as an actor.
Hmm.
It's
Yeah.
phenomenal. Yeah, it's a show that is stood the test of time. It's still loved by so many people. It gets new fans all the time. I know it's on Hulu and people
Yeah.
discover it and they're like, "Wow, this is great."
Yeah, it's interesting. I've worked on quite a few shows that are, you know, take place in a specific period of time, kind of like the Waltons. And those shows do stand up extremely well. I don't know that a show, um, like I did an episode of Policewoman with Angie Dickinson, which was a lot of fun to do. But I don't know if those shows stand up as well because, they're all supposed to be current and they all kind of look a little bit weird now. Like the cars are strange, but yeah, those period pieces are great, and they're so much fun to do. Just getting into a costume and exploring what it feels like to have been a person at that period of time. In the Waltons, I was part of John Boy's graduating class, and there was six of us in the high school. Didn't have a whole lot of stuff to say, but I was there, and he and I had a little bit of a moment there. And John Ritter was on the show, and he, then I ended up working again with him on Three's Company. So it's interesting how you keep running into to the same people and working with them at different times and catching up. So it's all those shows were fun. They were educational. They were exciting. And a lot of them I've forgotten about. That's what's so crazy. I did so many of them. I looked up on IMDb the other day, Falcon Crest, and I remember doing one episode of Falcon Crest and the only reason I remember it is because we were flying up to like to Napa or something to shoot the show, and the plane when it was flying, taking off from Burbank, halfway through the takeoff, the pilot saw a light come on or something, so he had to hit the brakes, and I'd never had that happen before, where you think you're taking off, then all of a sudden, no, you're not. And but then I looked at it had me as on two shows, and I thought, what was the other show? What was the other episode? And I had to kind of look it up and go, oh yeah, all right, I remember that now I do.
Yeah. Well, when you do so much, yeah, I mean, I can imagine, especially if some shows, if you're only there for a couple days, it all
Yeah,
kind of blends together over a
yeah.
career.
Well, I remember at the time it was really exciting.
Yeah.
You're really thrilled. And I also remember what I was feeling at the time, because you're a little bit unsure, trying to figure it out. And then I look back at some of these shows and I go, it really wasn't that bad. I was pretty good. Watched an episode the other day. I just happened to because everything's on the internet now of the Father Dowling Mysteries. I don't know if you remember what that show was with oh my goodness. Father in Happy Days. I'm drawing a blank for whatever reason. Um, and there was this complicated scene where I played a lawyer and I was reading the what was in the will, and the whole time that I'm reading it, there are these movers that are taking all the furniture out of the room. It was kind of funny the way that it was happening. I'm going, oh, this was a complicated scene to do this scene and have all these guys moving furniture out because that was kind of the joke is that this guy that had all the money, it's gone. There, everything's being repossessed.
That is funny. Yeah. Well, let's dive into voice work, which you've
Yeah,
done a ton of throughout your
yeah.
career, and you've done very different, kinds of voice work. You mentioned narration. You've done voice work for movies like Captain America and the Winter
Hmm.
Soldier, but you've also done a lot of cartoons. And I was reading on IMDb, and it had a separate category. It said like additional work, and it had all these
Yeah,
credits. ADR voice, ADR loop for Shrek movies and
yeah.
Kung Fu Panda. So what does that mean when it says
Okay.
ADR voice or loop?
ADR, this is it used to be one of the best kept secrets in Hollywood for actors because it was a great gig. And it's ADR stands for automated dialogue replacement. I know that you hear that and you go, what the heck does that mean? A loop group is also known as a Walla group because it started out that as as movies started to get better and the demands of the you know how movies have changed in the most dramatically, not in the way that they're shot, but in the sound. The sound has really been a big factor. Now they have like started out as Dolby where all this or stereo, and then it was Dolby where you had more of an immersive experience. Now they have a thing called Atmos, which has got you know dozens and dozens of speakers in these Atmos theaters that really immerse you and surround you in sound. So that's been a big deal. And what they needed to do is when you shoot a scene, let's say an example, it's two people at a restaurant and they're just talking at the table. Well, you've got a lot of people that are around. Yeah, the restaurant has to have activity. There's waiters that are walking around. There are people placing orders. There's a busboy. There's somebody that's paying for their bill. There's a couple of, a group of people at a table that are having a conversation. I mean, all kinds of stuff is happening. When you go in a restaurant, if you just listen to what's happening around you, a lot of stuff is going on. There's clinking of glasses. There's somebody drops something. All kinds of stuff happens. Well, they can't do that while they're shooting the scene because all that sound is going to bleed into the dialogue that's being said between the two actors. So, what they do when they shoot a scene is all those other actors pretend to do what they're doing. They'll say something, but they won't speak it. They'll go something like that, right? They're just kind of pretending, I'm going to have, let me have one more, send me the check, whatever it might be. So you've got all this stuff that's happening behind them that needs to be added in later on so that the scene sounds like it's real. So what they do is they bring in a lot of actors and they call them loop groups, Walla groups, and we will fill out all that other stuff. So in other words, there'll be, that couple that's in the background, that's the guy's asking for a check. Okay, Robert, you be the guy that asked for the check, and Julie, you be the his date. And so we need to have a conversation. And then when the guy goes like this, I've got to say, check, please. And then the waiter comes over and says, no hurry, whatever it might be. So there's another actor that says what he says. So all of that stuff needs to be added in. Also, the same with an animated cartoon. They will have the actors do their main dialogue, but then when they fill it out with other stuff, or they have secondary characters or somebody that says something, maybe just a scream or whatever it might be, you need to bring in actors to do that. And what's really fun about it is when you have like action movies. I've done so many action movies or war movies where you have to do like if it's two stunt guys fighting, they don't record these guys actually their what their sound is. They're just kind of doing their thing. We go in later on and go, yeah, all that, the scream or guy gets thrown out of a window, he's on fire. What does that guy sound like? So we would do all that crazy stuff. And what's sweet about it is, you get your SAG day rate for doing it, plus you get residuals. So I like to look at it, you own a piece of the movie. And I've done, I don't know, 600 of them or something. I mean, a lot of movies, you know, everything from Gladiator to those animated ones, Shrek. And it's like, okay, be this guy, be that guy. It's like, okay, sure. So you just do whatever you need to do, whatever they ask you to do. I just recently worked on the new uh, Jurassic Park movie that's coming out. The director is a friend of mine, and he turns out is a big fan of Ancient Aliens, a show that I narrate. And I worked with him on his movie The Creator a couple of years ago, and but he didn't cast me because he knew that it was me. He just was listening to my voice at the studio and goes, "Wait a minute, are you the narrator of Ancient Aliens?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "We have to take a selfie." And we became good buddies because he said, because that's the show that I listen to all the time. That's like my background music when I'm working. I have that on. That's what I listen to. So that's kind of what ADR is all about. So in all those movies, sometimes you do a little bit of something that's a little bit more featured in an animated movie. Sometimes, you're just part of a lot of different stuff that's happening. Sometimes you get credited, sometimes you don't. Most times you don't. I mean, I've maybe been credited on, I don't know, 20 or 30, something like that. But in reality, I've worked on five or 600, like I said.
Wow, that's really cool. That yeah, that they just kind of bring you in and fill in that noise, and you get to have some fun with it. And I mean that does sound like a pretty good gig.
It's a fun gig. What I like to say is you have to dare to be boring because you can't say anything too interesting. You can't be at that table at the restaurant right behind the lead actors that are having their scene and talk about surgery you just had. That's not going to play. You know, you know, it's it's not going to be, or you're not going to be asking your wife for a divorce at that moment. That's you got to be really dull so that it doesn't stand out, which is it challenges a lot of people's improvisation skills because you think you need to be funny at all times. And in that stuff, you need to be kind of real. And you have your fun when you get to do the efforts and the action stuff and the guys on fire. I mean, I worked on a movie. It was one of those Xander Cage movies, Triple X, and they brought us in because they needed. It was just efforts. This was a day of just efforts. I mean, sometimes they'll do that. It's just like today, all we're going to do is just the action stuff. So you're the guy that's fallen off the motorcycle. You're the guy that gets hit with a sledgehammer. You're the guy that gets thrown out of a building, whatever it might be. Or these two guys fighting. And we're all actors. We're all going, doing our grunts and groans. And this one actor I became friends with, started talking to him. He was he was nominated for an Olivier Award, which is the English equivalent of the Tonys, for his work on in the play Miss Saigon, and he was about to go in a couple of weeks to recreate that role on Broadway in the revival of Miss Saigon. And I'm thinking, this guy nominated for an Olivier Award. And look at another person. This person went to Yale Drama School. This person came from Juilliard, and we're all doing the same stuff. Me, I grew up in Hollywood, so that was my education. But the level of talent that's out there, even in those, doing those silly things, is incredibly high. At the professional level, the people that are working, that are consistently working, are unbelievably good. And that's something that a lot of, not, I don't want to say wannabes, but people that are looking to break into the business don't appreciate, especially in voiceover. They think that if you've got a decent voice, a good voice, or people tell you you've got a nice voice, that's all it takes. It's a good start. It's nice to have a good voice, but you need to be able to play that instrument. I can give you a Stradivarius, and if I had a Stradivarius, I'd be lucky to even get any kind of a sound out of it. So having a great instrument is one thing, but you got to be able to utilize it. You got to be able to play it.
Yeah. I think what you mentioned, it's very similar to what another actor just told me recently. I was asking him about why something was labeled as whatever on IMDb, and he was like, it really isn't any different than what I did in this other movie. It's just the way they credited me, and he said in the end, it's all acting.
Mhm.
It's all acting. It's all
Yeah,
important. And it
yeah.
just sometimes it seems like the way you're credited almost discredits what you're doing, and the people they see the credits and they're like, oh, that's all he did. But no. like you mentioned all these people and their backgrounds and what they've done in their careers and yeah, maybe you're doing some background work, but it's important to the film and like you said, they were all doing a phenomenal job and it's all acting in a way. It's all needed. It's like a football team. I mean, if you're the third string quarterback, like you still have an importance to play on the team. You're still needed. It's all
Mhm.
important.
Yeah, and people also, these actors, um, I have a lesson that I learned many, many years ago, which was when a door opens, walk through it. And it takes a little bit of courage to be able to do that, because it may not be what it is you think you want. I know a lot of actors, for example, that they wanted to be a movie star. Well, the audience doesn't lie. The audience didn't really wasn't really interested in them becoming a movie star. However, the audience may have really been interested in having them be the best friend of the movie star. You think about all the actors, the character actors, the people that make really good livings, consistent livings, have worked for decades and decades, and they have played roles that are kind of, secondary roles. Maybe every once in a while they get, a semi-lead in something, but primarily they're there to support the stars, and they have great careers. They work all the time. They get to utilize their craft. They're not selling shoes someplace and hoping to be a movie star. No, they're working, and they're really critically needed. When you think about, I always look at when I work on a TV show or something, or even when I'm doing narrations, it's how do I serve the story? The story is the most important thing. And if you've studied Joseph Campbell and the hero's journey in any way, you understand the importance of all the characters that are in that story, because there's gatekeepers, there's mentors, there's all kinds of the important characters that serve the story. And if you don't have those, the story falls apart. Uh, I did a documentary on this was and was nominated for an Emmy. Did a couple of them. One was on the making of Star Wars, which was called Empire of Dreams. And then I did another one was called The Legacy Revealed, Star Wars: The Legacy Revealed, which talked about the mythology of Star Wars. And I was really intrigued after working on that, because I've always loved stories. And I went up to Pacifica College because they had a workshop. I don't know if you know Pacifica, but it's where the Joseph Campbell Library is. And Joseph Campbell was if you've ever seen the PBS documentary series about where he explains stories, Joseph Campbell, it's fascinating because he explains why there need to be these elements in a story for it to work. And he talked about Star Wars, for example, and that's what we talked about in this documentary, was how it filled all the elements that you needed to make the story. That's why you can go back and watch that story over and over and over and over again and never tire of it, because it hits all the right beats. One of the beats, for example, would be the hero has to die and be reborn, metaphorically. And if you think about the first Star Wars film, Episode 4, the first one, where Luke is in that trash compactor thing with everybody else, and he gets pulled down underneath the water, and you see bubbles coming up, and then you see no bubbles coming up, and everybody thinks he's dead. Well, suddenly he comes out of the water. He's reborn, and at that moment, that's when he, as the character of the hero, because he's what they call the reluctant hero. He's the guy that doesn't want to be a hero, but he's drawn into it by circumstances. That's when he starts to become the hero that he's meant to be. It's in that moment you go, that's why it resonates so much with people. So when you hit those beats, that's what's critically important. So as an actor, you go, where do I serve the story here? How do I hit the right beat so that the story works right? And if you look at it that way, then it's not all about being a star. It's about, because if you're not doing your job and the story's not written well, and if the actors aren't doing their jobs well in a supporting role, the the hero falls apart. I mean, the movie star falls apart. It doesn't work. So it's critically important. And also, as an actor, you want to make a living, man. It's hard for people to make money as a professional actor. There are very few of us that are able to do that. And you have to that's why going through the door that opens for you is critically important because it gives you the opportunity to do all the other stuff that you want to do. I worked with a guy in a commercial a few months ago as a son of a friend of mine. He wants to do theater. I mean, he just loves theater. Went to England, studied theater for a couple of years at an academy. He's doing a show in New York right now, and uh, and he wasn't sure about commercials. I said, do this stuff. Don't let this stuff go because that will support you in all the other stuff that you want to do. Yeah, you could be a waiter and then do theater at night, or you can be a commercial actor, make a lot of money, do well, and be able to do your theater at night. Which sounds better? If you get to the point of where, listen, I just want to do theater, I'm making enough money, I'm good as just being a professional theater actor, fantastic, go for it. But the business has changed, the business is challenging, so it's important to try to not turn your nose up or turn away from opportunities that present themselves. Because I've also found that those opportunities, when you walk through that door, so many wonderful things happen. All kinds of other doors open up for you. It's like kismet. It's amazing how it plays out.
Yeah, no, I think that's very good advice and applies all over life. When doors open, don't close them. You don't understand why it opened, but it might help you later down the line. People you meet,
Hmm.
there's so much. You're not going to have all the answers right here in the moment.
Yeah.
Why is this happening? But it might build on your career. It could be something unexpected that takes you down a road that ends up being the greatest thing that ever happened to you, and you would have never known it if you just closed that door and walked the other direction.
Yeah, and play the long game. Everybody is into this immediate gratification. My theatrical agent, first of all, I'm giving you all the inside baseball stuff. It's really hard for an actor to have a theatrical agent. A theatrical agent is one that handles TV, film roles, that kind of stuff. It's much easier to get a commercial agent because they do a lot more commercials, are constantly looking for new people. Theatrical agent is very challenging. And I know a lot of really gifted, talented actors with a lot of credits that aren't able to get with a theatrical agent. When, oh God, it must have been 20 plus years ago, the guy that is my agent was the receptionist at the agency, and he and I became friends. He was the receptionist at the agency. He now owns the company. It's his company. And I am there's one other actor that has been with him longer than me, but I'm the next longest one. I never have to worry about finding a new theatrical agent. This guy is never going to let me go. He's always going to send me stuff. He's always supportive of what I'm doing, and we're friends. And it started out because, when he was nobody, he was just the receptionist. I could have ignored him. A lot of people do. It's like, but that play the long game. Put that positive energy out. Make friends, and it's amazing how that ends up playing in your favor. I'm going to be doing a class at Screen Actors Guild in a few weeks, where I'm going to be teaching narration at their voiceover lab, which is a very prestigious thing to do. I mean, the voiceover lab at SAG it's first class. They really vet their people. It's a nice honor to do. And the reason I'm doing it is I've got credibility. I do a lot of shows, but more importantly, the guy that is head of that department now, I used to work with at a casting office where I was teaching there, and he was in the engineer or something. We hit it off. We became friends, and all of a sudden he became in a position where he could decide who's going to do what. And first thing he did, called me up. I hadn't even spoken to him in years. It's like, hey, you want to do this? What am I going to say? No, no, I don't want to do it. No, I'm going to say yes because I don't know where that will lead. It may lead nowhere. But the thing is, the door is open. I'm gonna say yes. If you say yes to these things, don't be stupid, of course, but you say yes and walk through that door, it's amazing what happens. The only time I've regretted things in life, or as far as professional is concerned, is jobs that I've turned down because it never really panned out. I was supposed to be on, I think, Seinfeld. I think I was cast at least twice. And first one I turned down because, well, it wasn't enough money. I'm like, okay, all right, well, it was the first year of the show. Okay, there'll be another one. If you do one, they'll never be able to use you again. It's like, okay, I understand that. Then I got cast another one. We were actually shooting, and it was a scene where Kramer, Michael Richards, I guess they were fumigating Jerry's apartment, and Kramer was in there, and he comes out and he's, blowing smoke out of his mouth because he's been there with all these toxic fumes. And I played a scientist, me and this other guy, and we were Kramer for money was doing some kind of a research project where we just kind of could monitor his vital signs and stuff and we are paying him a few bucks. And we saw that his signs were like really weird. They were like crazy weird. It was because had been in that toxic environment. Well, I knew we were in trouble. We rehearsed the scene, and Michael Richards goes, I got to talk to Larry about this. This isn't working. I got to talk to Larry. And Larry David was the creator of the show. And I turned to the actor that's with me. I said, we just got cut. And he says, what are you talking about? I said, guarantee this scene is cut. And later that night, I get a call. Yeah, they cut the scene. Here are the options. We'll either give you a smaller part in the same show because there's a little, it can be an art teacher in the show, or we'll pay you because we have to pay you, and you don't have to do this role, and you can audition for us again. And I thought, I'll take the money. I'll take the cash and see what happens. Well, I ended up, you know, auditioning for it in the future, did not get the part. So that was my one shot to be on Seinfeld, and I turned it down twice. And I'd rather have had that as a credit, on the resume, and have that experience than to have not. So I went, okay, that one didn't pan out for me too well. It did pan out for me on Who's the Boss, because that one we were doing a show, and suddenly I won't go into details as to why it happened because it's kind of salacious, but they suddenly, like halfway through the week, and it was a fun show to work on. The first day you work on the show, Tony Danza, all you do is sit around and talk about current events. It's like that. You don't act, you don't do anything. It's like you're just getting to know one another. What do you think about what's happening in the paper? Who's going to win the World Series? It's like that kind of stuff. But we're halfway through the week, and suddenly I get a call that the show's been canceled. That this episode's canceled. Uh, they're taking their break, and they won't be back for a couple of weeks. And I went, that doesn't make any sense. And then they said, we can either pay you, or we'll just promise to put you in another show in a couple of weeks. And I thought, that doesn't sound right. So this time I said, you know what? Just pay me. Well, they paid me. And then suddenly, like 2 weeks later, the show's back on, and now you get to do the same show. So they hired me again. So I got to work twice for that one. But yeah, it was so it is what it is. It is what it is.
Yeah. Well, that's all very interesting. Um, Before, quickly as we
Uh-huh.
wrap up here, you also had a couple small roles on the Big Bang Theory. You did some
Oh yeah.
voice work, and you were
Yeah.
the headmaster on the Zoom call
Yeah.
when he
Oh yeah.
wasn't able to fly out.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, the Big Bang, I called myself, part of the Chuck Lorre road company, or because I did so many shows for him. I did probably 10 or 12 episodes of Two and a Half Men, where I did voiceover for that. And then he put me on at least 5 or 6 of the Big Bangs. and only one of them was on camera, the headmaster. But I played a lot of different voiceover roles on his shows, and so he's been very, very good to me. And that was an exciting show to work on because I remember the first time I worked on it. I think it was the first season, and it was a scene with it was like the voice of a train conductor or something with the woman that played it was like a female Terminator. I'm trying to remember who the heck it was. It was another show that was popular at the time, and she was on it. And I saw the guys out there, outside the sound stage, just having a smoke or whatever the heck they were doing. And I went up to him and I told him, I said, this show is going to last a long time. You guys are set. And they looked at me like I was crazy. I said, "You think so?" I said, "Yeah, trust me, trust me. You're in a good place." And I got to tell you that I have a soft spot in my heart for Johnny Galecki. He's a really really good guy. He's one of those guys, and it was he was the main star of the show when it first started. He was the anchor of the show because he had so much experience doing sitcoms in the past. And he's one of those guys that if a new actor is coming on the set, he comes over to you, he introduces himself, wants to know how you're doing. Uh, so he's a consummate pro, a really really good guy, super talented, and the show. Come on, I mean, going down and just hanging out in the set. I mean, I would because when you would record the stuff on those shows, the Chuck Lorre shows, you go down to the set to do it. So it's like, okay, everybody shut up. Robert's going to do his thing, and you do your thing, and Chuck is right there going, I can do it again, make it a little bit slower, speed it up. One thing you don't do is change his dialogue. That's one thing you do not do because it's like as written. It's like working on a David Mamet piece. It's like, no, all the pauses, all the commas, all that stuff, that stays.
Yeah. Well, that is really cool that you got to go to the studio,
Oh yeah.
actually be there on the set. You were truly right. I mean, the show lasted a long time and they were set in the end. I mean, main cast was making like what, $1 million an episode or
Oh yeah.
something. I mean, they were they
Oh,
were
I remember another story when I was there the last time I was there. I think it was playing the voice. No, it was the voice of an astronaut. I don't know if you remember the episode where the toilet breaks on the space shuttle or something.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and I'm like mission control or whatever the heck it is. And I was talking to the gal who played, oh my God, Leonard's wife. I'm trying to remember her name is.
Kaylee
But she had that.
Cuoco.
Yeah, no, 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 no. Uh, 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 Simon Helberg's wife, the woman that she
Oh,
had
oh, Bernadette.
yeah, Bernadette,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
high voice, the high voice.
Yeah,
That's not her real voice.
right.
That is not her real voice. And
Yep.
I asked her about that. I asked her, I said, when you auditioned, because I love, getting into actors' methods and how they work. I said, when you auditioned, did you audition with that voice? Because I knew that if she did, that was really brave. And she goes, yeah, she goes, I walked into the room and I saw all these other women that were there, and they all looked like me. And I thought, I've got to do something different. And I think she said that she did either her mother's voice or her aunt's voice, who speaks like that. She decided, you know what, I'm going to do that. And so basically, she hung it all out on the line. Said, you know what, I'm either going to really impress them, or going to think this is great, or it's all going to go to into the toilet, where I'm going to be a laughing stock. They're going to go, what the hell was that when I walk out of the room? But she went in there. To her credit, she did it and knocked it out of the park. And I got to tell you, I was really impressed. And essentially gave her a high five. I said, "Good job. That takes courage. That was great. Those
Yeah.
are those are how that's how you get jobs. You have to be willing to risk. You have to
Yep.
be willing to take a chance to separate yourself from everybody else and give them something a little bit different. And if you're going to crash and burn, do it spectacularly. do it with,
Yeah.
do, I was in uh, many, many years ago, I was a big fan of the B-17 aircraft, and I got an opportunity to fly in one. They had one that came to an air show near me, and I thought, I got to do this. And it was like $400, was tax deductible, and you get to fly in this thing that, it's been in the air since 1944, 1945. And I was thinking, and when you're flying in this thing, it's rickety, it's dangerous, it's small, it's not a easy plane to be in. And I thought, if if this thing goes down and I die, and the news is I died in a crash of a B-17, that would be kind of going out with some glory, you, as opposed to he got hit by he was walking on a sidewalk, got hit by a bus because he was listening to his headphones or something. That would not be as exciting.
Yeah. No.
So my advice to other actors is, man, go for it. Give it your
Yeah.
best shot. Lay it out there. Be yourself. Be true, be honest, but you know, leave it all on the stage. Don't hold anything back.
Yeah. No, that's very good advice. And it's a good place to end the episode because I know you've got to go here and I'm sure
Yeah.
we could talk about everything for hours, but we touched on a lot of great stuff. You shared a lot of great stories. I really appreciate you taking some time out. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah, this was fantastic, Alex. I'm sorry that I just kind of pontificated as much as I did, but as you
Oh,
can
it was
tell,
perfect.
I'm still excited about what it is that I do, that I get to do. I'm so blessed and so fortunate. Ancient Aliens, we get picked up for another season. Curse of Oak Island's picked up for another season. It's the number one show on cable television with 3 million people tuning in each and every week, if you can believe that. So I'm incredibly blessed. I don't know why. It it the fates decided to smile on me in that way. But I've also been replaced. I've been fired. It's not all good. Sometimes it's heartbreaking, but that's the journey, and I guess it's kind of a metaphor for what life is. Um, you have to get through the journey. It's like Woody Allen had a joke where he talked about a fellow that his brother. He says, my brother, he went to a psychiatrist, and he thinks he's a chicken. And the psychiatrist asked me, goes, well, why don't you tell him he's not a chicken? And the guy looks at the psychiatrist and says, well, we need the eggs. So it's life is crazy. It's confusing. It is what it is, but we need the eggs. We need to kind of like keep it going because it is what it is, and this is the one life we've got, so we might as
Yeah.
well make the most of it.
Yeah. No, I really appreciate you talking a lot. The best podcasts I've had are with the people that want to talk and they want to share stories. Those end up being the best ones, my favorites, the ones that stick out the most, So I'm glad you talked and talked and talked and I just got to listen.
Well, it's been my pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you, Alex.
Thanks for listening. Please stay tuned for more episodes soon.